Well, let's get more on that, because a very important point made by Kgosientsho Ramokgopa there, the Minister for Energy and Electricity, about how it is becoming unsustainable, untenable, he said, to continue to increase the price of power in the way in which it has been. Lungile Mashele is an energy economist. She joins us now. Lungile, good afternoon to you. Do you agree with the Minister? It's quite a strong point for the Minister to say, just as power prices are going up, that this situation is unsustainable.
Good afternoon, Stephen. I have to agree with the Minister. It's unsustainable, it's untenable, but I think also there's just a lack of consumer education, especially around this topic of electricity tariff increases. One, we are seeing double-digit increases, and we must remember that in the previous year, we came off of a high of just over 20% increase, and now it's about 12.7%, on average. And of course, this cost is then passed down to municipal customers. And if you're in the city of Johannesburg, you would then hit with an additional 200 Rand or 230, including VAT cost, which is the fixed tariff charge. And all of this makes for an unpleasant situation, which could very well escalate, as we've seen in other parts of Africa or the world even.
One of the complicating factors here is that the tariff of electricity, setting that tariff, is quite technical. There are lots of different elements to it. And technical is a word that journalists use when they mean difficult, right? It's a difficult thing to do. And I'm supposed to be able to understand it. And I look at my electricity bill, I look at other people's electricity bills, and I go, and I shake my head. I don't get it. And isn't that a problem? Is that people don't understand it. All they know is that they're paying a lot more and getting a lot less, and especially with that 230 Rand surcharge. And that feeds a cynicism, doesn't it? At a very cynical time, unfortunately.
Stephen, we're literally 2 years before local government elections. It feeds into people's fears, and as we've seen, it also feeds into voting patterns. And people are not afraid to vote anymore because they know that change will be effected. We are sitting in a situation where highest unemployment, highest inequality, more and more people are queuing in those unemployment lines to collect UIF. We have a situation where every single day we're being told this company is closing and that company is closing. These are the former working class, former middle class who are going down this road. And it's going to be felt in municipalities. Then you've got the compounding pressures of the electricity price increases, be it food, be it anything that is above inflation that's going to affect negatively. But to your point, there is very little consumer education that is happening around tariffs. If I just very simply look at your residential tariff, there's the element where there's a network charge that must be paid, right? This is for all the cabling that came from the substation, everything that basically goes to your electricity meter outside. There's your metering that needs to happen. There's administration costs. There's servicing, there's the energy charge, which is the actual energy that you use. And all that has been happening of the last week is that the city of Johannesburg is saying, let's flesh out what the costs are and let's pay reflective costs either, or rather let's pay reflective costs. The problem is people are questioning, and rightfully so, whether these are the correct costs or not whether you should be paying them or not, because other municipalities are paying these very same fixed charges. But I think with the city of Johannesburg, it was the fleshing out of this cost and people not being informed or educated.
Is City Power right, do you think? And I realise, this is a question with probably 6 different answers. But is City Power right to charge people on prepaid this 230 Rand? It is a network fee, as they call it, as you've explained. It actually is, in a way, necessary. But for many people, they just can't afford it. This is literally changing what people eat. No one can afford to cook a potato anymore. So, is City Power right to do this?
So they are absolutely right. Let's look at your postpaid or your credit customers. They're paying about R1,000 a month of this fixed charge alone. If you look at City of Cape Town, the very same fixed charge is about 230, if I'm not mistaken. If you look at City of Tshwane, that fixed charge is about 140 something rand for your normal prepaid customers. This is not a new charge. It's in how they communicated it, or rather they did not communicate it effectively, that has led to this unfortunate mess. Are they right? Absolutely. The key thing is it supposed to be 50 Rand? Is it supposed to be 200 Rand? Is it supposed to be 150 Rand? And I think that's where the crux of the matter is, and actually comes out in what we call cost of supply studies, where it needs to be investigated to say where actually does the cost lie, because for a very long time municipalities have been thumb-sucking a lot of these numbers and using electricity tariffs to sort of cover up inefficiencies in other areas in the municipality.
There are other issues, and the President started his weekly newsletter this morning noting that it's been just over 100 days. So on Friday, it was 100 days of no load shedding. I should probably say consecutive days, just to get that right. But he also said that we cannot relax. And it was interesting. He noted it, and then he said immediately, there was no celebration in this letter. If I'd been him, I mean, I would have celebrated it. But he said we cannot relax. Is that the right approach?
That is absolutely correct. I think the celebrations are for the Eskom staff, for their morale and for their unity and making sure that they operate as a team, and for their leadership. However, at a national level, it's about ensuring that for the next 5 years, we can move on from 100 days no load shedding to 5 years, 10 years no load shedding. And how does that actually happen? It's through policy implementation, through the integrated resource plan, through various initiatives at municipal and at provincial level as well. So we cannot rest at this point. Eskom has done their part. Government also needs to meet them at some point. So let's look at the nuclear program, at the gas program. Let's also look at additional solar, wind also, and let's chart a proper path to 2030 to make sure we never go through this period ever again.
When load shedding started, there was a lot of conversation, I haven't heard this phrase for a while, but of the reserve margin. And what that meant, as I understood it, that you needed between 15 and 20% more electricity than you actually used. I hope I've remembered that all correctly.
Correct.
We still need that reserve margin, and we know we're close to that. We're still running on the edge, in other words.
Absolutely. Look, we certainly do have excess capacity. You would see maybe we have about 49 gigawatts that are installed, and during our peak, maybe like this evening, we will hit about 34, 35 gigawatts because it's extremely cold. But for the most part, we do have a huge surplus. However, that surplus is not always available. And this is the key thing, speaking to your reserve margin. And you're correct in saying it should be about 15%, and we're not there yet. And this is why when you're planning energy that needs to be available in the next 5, 10, or 15 years, you certainly need to target reserve margin, and it needs to be available. That's the key thing. It has to be available. It cannot just be nameplate capacity, because currently we do have nameplate capacity, but it is not available.
The sector is still moving very quickly. I mean, we're talking about the costs of billing, the technicalities of managing tariffs, and we're all talking about generation capacity and reserve capacity and all the rest in one national network. Are we really going to have one sort of national network? I mean, people talk, the figures that fly around, 400 billion rand here, whatever it is, to fix it. But is that how electricity is going to work in 15, 20 years' time? Or are we going to have smaller, local networks? Realize there's a little bit of ideology here, run by renewables. Are we going to have more distributed networks rather than one big national network, is my question.
So it's important to remember that we do have one big network, which is the transmission. And then you also have your distribution side also. The question rather is, around ownership and who's going to own what eventually. And the answer is very simple. Everything will be owned by the national transmission company. So that's one way. Then it's a question of who's going to build it out. And it becomes a question of capacity. Who can build out what and when? When is it going to connect to? However, ownership will always revert to a national holder of the transmission.
Lungile Mashele, thanks very much indeed, as always, an electricity economist, energy economist, I should say. Do appreciate the time. A lot more news to come in a minute.